Hello and welcome to another video. So today we're playing a mid-mecha shadow is what I was going for. Either way, mid-mecha shadow, fairly interesting. It's using the base core that was, of course, the top and early game of the old mecha shadow deck, but incorporating more of a good mid-range using things like Underworld, air to your full-on advantage, along with Aisha when you have enough shadows. Of course, Aisha is a fairly good one, and as I've come to learn, there is another alt art for this, and that's actually the leader card. I just got the generic one. Really stupid that they decided to do it that way. I just preferred the alt art as just a normal Aisha, not the new one. Games deciding how they want to divvy up card spaces, so they are the two new cards that have been added to this deck. There's nothing else crazily added, but you will notice they make a huge difference. The ability to reanimate 4 on Storm and getting the free Evo out of this is absolutely nuts, especially when you get that 3 to face, then the reanimate 4, and potentially getting something like Bone Drone can really win you the game quite quickly. Of course, the Aisha as well, an Underworld Sovereign, being able to get a 4 damage Storm practically for free on, say, turn 6 or turn 7, when you're going to want it for the buff cards like Omen of Craving, can be absolutely insane as well. So it definitely speeds up the deck and makes it a lot quicker. So I'm going to get right into this and check it out. So first up, we have a Shadow versus Shadow. They unfortunately did get the Aisha leader, which depresses me a little bit. It was mainly confusing because they use the same character model art, I think, or very similar character model art on the new card and the alternate version of the new card, which is, again, a little bit silly. They should have at least separated them enough. But we're starting off fairly well with our own hand here. We've got the Mecha Angel, which is a good turn 2 play. It's going to easily generate 3 shadows for us, very effectively. We've also got the Fran Monster Girl, which will be a pretty nice card in the long run, especially since they went for their own and they went for Attendant. I would have made that play if they didn't play their own Attendant, but since they did, we are going to go for Curse, trade it off, and get at least 2 shadows from this card. Along with the fact that we've still got the 2 bodies on board, should leave us with more than enough. We also have Bone Drone ready on turn 4 for a setup with an Evo, would actually pretty much cripple our opponent. Crafty Reaper, that's actually a card I'm not running, but I noticed this deck, obviously in our opponent's was, and it does look like an interesting one. Good solid turn 1 play, which I don't think this deck really has, so that could potentially be a nice card to try and incorporate in. It'd just be hard to find a slot for it, I think. So we've set up a nice board that has its own refresh with the 5-2, so it's got some potential with our Hound. And that was a fairly decent trade-off, especially since they went face again. So we're going to get a full board Cerberus. Couldn't ask for a much better one of those, especially when we're going up against Shadow. So now even if they went for their own Cerberus, they're going to be at a huge disadvantage. And we've got our Kawi for next turn, which will give us a Bone Drone, potentially, if we want to play it out. That's only provided if we lose 2 followers. Manifest Malice. Not a bad way to deal with this, but again, they're leaving us 2 slots free, so Underworld is going to come in handy. It's a completely free Evo on turn 6 when we play it like this, so that's going to be great. 3 damage to face from that, 3 from the rest of our board. Nice 6 damage, plus the summoning of a Bone Drone and a solid 3/3 follower, so can't really go wrong with that at all. Our opponent's definitely not going to have a fun time. Lady Grey is a pretty decent counter though. Definitely a good option. No, and then Warring Thunder. Unfortunately, there's no way to actually have it die immediately here, unless they, of course, trade off well. Which they didn't decide to do. They could have got lucky and potentially trade with this. Fortunately, we didn't get a win con. I was hoping to win that turn, but fortunately our draw just wasn't good enough. We did at least remove all this, which is great. Even if it did cost us a little bit. And it gave us another chance to go for a Cerberus. I did decide to hold off the Evo though. I didn't want to use it this time, since we are pretty much setting ourselves up for the Aisha next turn if our opponent wipes out just 2 of these cards, which they can't really afford not to in this situation, so definitely worthwhile. Looks like they're running a much more of an Evolve Shadow kind of deck, although they seem to use very similar engines to the one we're using, so it makes sense. And there is the Aisha. We're going to have plenty for this next turn. And we got Manifest Malice, so that's actually a really good removal card now. We do need to go face though, so I did decide to evolve the Buffalo Bones for the trade here, since I need to go face at least once. And we can still remove everything on their board, if we wanted to, of course. We decided not to, because what's the point of removing the 2/2 and giving them more potential for us to die. Name it for their own, Aisha. It's not actually a problem at all. It's not going to be anywhere near enough on its own. They'd need to have had at least 2 Aishas and more shadows to actually do this.
Not bad at all.
It worked out pretty decently for us. So our next game here is up against Rune. Shadow vs Rune is an interesting one. I've actually been testing a Rune deck myself. I've had moderate luck with it, but it is still not the best. It's a straight up Evo Rune, focusing of course Ginger, Zeus, and just straight up Evo effects to get advantage. It's definitely an interesting concept, but it's very RNG heavy, and it's definitely a tricky one to get the hang of. So I am hoping to have a video of that for you guys soon, but we'll have to wait and see if it actually turns out okay first. So kicking things off, well, here we've got a good turn 2 play with Deadly Dreamer. Neither of us had turn 1 plays, which isn't uncommon with the current decks, so it's not too much of a surprise. But Manifest Malice is such a good turn 2 play. If you're going going first, and you drop down, you can pretty much counter every single 2-drop on turn 3, which is awesome. Mechanized Lifeform though is actually not a bad card. When I was playing some Rune, it was a pretty insane one to go with. So we do want to remove it. I can't really afford to leave it up. Bone Drone is perfect though. We've already got the Cerberus in hand. All we need to do is go for that perfect turn 4, turn 5 combo, which honestly I pull off more often than not. I'm actually surprised how often that goes down. I very rarely have the Aeneas turn 6 though, so it's actually nice to have that one for this match, if we need it. At this rate, we probably won't even need it. So the Cerberus, with a nice little bit of Evo. We're going to definitely trade one of the 1/1s away. I don't really want to keep it. It's no point. I'd much rather keep the 5/5 body, even if we're losing a ping. Just logical sense there. Plus, if they manage to remove one more follower, we always get the Aeneas, so why not? Alright, no real problem there. Things are looking very positive. We've now got the turn 6 Aeneas play. Plus, if we want, we could throw another even Evo to the board and go for a nice, cool 9 damage.
Emergency mode activated. I'm through.
And that was enough to cause a concede. Not a huge shock considering our board and our curve. So this variation on the old Shadow deck is still wonderful. It does a great job, and I was very comfortable playing it because I had got fairly used to playing the Mecha Shadow deck. So it's pretty much identical in its playstyle. It's more mid-range focused, again, like I said, instead of the more late-ish game focus that I found that Shadow had before. So still a great deck, highly recommend it. Only need to add 2 cards if you were already running a mid-Shadow or Mecha Shadow deck in general, so reasonably easy to build. The only problem is it is very high cost. You're looking at quite a lot of legendaries here. Fairy for 3, which I didn't really have Fairy for 3 for a long time, and having 3 Fairy, you definitely notice the difference. It definitely can make an impact if you get drawn into that late game. But if you don't, a good solid 2-drop could fill that gap. Potentially even the new 1-drop that gives a Shadow could help a little bit with this at least. So that's one card you can potentially change. Everything else in this deck though, basically cannot be changed. You don't want to get rid of Aisha at all, just full stop, too good. Cerberus, again, too good. Aeneas, perfect card, can't really go wrong with it. It synergizes with basically every other mech card in the deck. Colossal Skull Lord, amazing AoE damage, although getting a lot weaker now that there's a lot of mech decks floating around. Mecha Wing Angel is again way too great, and Omen of Craving, the one other card you could have considered changing, is just a great finisher and way too good a card to pass up. The only thing that you could switch this for is if you're running a similar deck in Unlimited, you could definitely go with Ektar. He would do the job just fine, if not better. So overall, got to give this deck high praise. It's very solid, does a good job, and is very enjoyable. If you guys do want to check this deck out, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe. You will find the deck list in the description below. Until next time, guys, see ya.